Hello, welcome back to Features and Fictions. I am your host. I'm Helena, and I talk about books and films. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm assuming if you clicked on this, you don't like to read. If you're someone who finds reading boring, can't concentrate when reading, who finds it a bit pretentious, someone who doesn't have enough time, potentially, I've got some tips into how you can get into reading, how to find more time, what to look for, a little backstory. After GCSEs, I don't think I read a book for fun for about 4 years. So, I get you. I was once a person who didn't read at all and hated reading, but now I read a reasonable amount. I mean, what is much?
You said you didn't read much.
Well, what is much?
To quote any other Gilmore Girls Jess fans out there. But yes, I don't think I've gone a day without reading for years now. So I think I've got eight tips into how to get there. Tip number 1, you're reading the wrong books. There are millions, billions, possibly trillions of books out there for you to be reading. All sorts of genres, spanning the centuries. Once you find the kinds of books you're into, you'll trust me, you will love reading. Tip number 2, stop treating reading like a homework assignment. Reading doesn't have to be that serious. Treat reading exactly as you would Netflix. You know, there are some amazing shows on Netflix. You know, you've got your Squid Games, you've got your Haunting of Hill House. I will mention it in every video, don't you worry. But you also got your trash, you got your Selling Sunsets, you've got your Too Hot to Handles. I watched all of these shows, I absolutely have. Where's the next series of Selling Sunset? Please, I need to know what happened to Chrishell. But you see what I mean? You can go the highbrow route, or you can just stick with the trash and you can just have fun with it. This is how you can treat reading. Sometimes I think, oh, I want to expand my horizons. I want to learn something. I want to become a better person through this book. But often I just want to read some trash, and that's fine. A lot of the time I read as if I was watching Netflix. I'm just having a great time and switching my brain off. It doesn't have to be homework. Tip number 3, linked to the previous point, don't buy into pretentious literary circles. No, it is unnecessary. Anyone who looks down on you for what you read, not welcome. You're not a better or worse reader whether you only read classics or you only read historical romance. There's such like a moral thing about what you should or shouldn't read. And also we can have a balance here. Read Joan Esbo and James Joyce, you know, they're not mutually exclusive. Again, like I said, reading is just entertainment. It's amazing and you can learn a lot, but people who judge you because of what you read, firm pass. Okay, tip number 4, revisit old favourites. If there was a book series you loved as a child, just go back and read it. Doesn't matter if it's YA. I ain't gonna judge you. Anyone who grew up post-90s, Harry Potter, we go back to it again and again because they're great stories and we know we love them and they kind of inspire that part of our brain that used to love reading. Puts us back in that mindset of finding reading kind of magical, if you will. God, I'm so sappy in this video. But it does, it puts you back into that sort of getting lost in a fictional world space that we used to be in as children. But another way, tip number 5, read the book of the movie. So for me, I love Fight Club. What did I do? Went and read Fight Club. If you love American Psycho, go and read American Psycho. If you love I'm Thinking of Ending Things, go and read I'm Thinking of Ending Things. You see where I'm going. It's an easy formula. Find a movie. If it's got a book, fantastic, read the book. You know the plot, you know the premise, you know the characters, you know you're gonna like it. I don't know, there's just something about knowing what you're getting yourself into just makes the whole reading experience a little bit easier. This is also a particularly good tip if you want to get into classics. So if you want to read Jane Austen, just watch the bajillion of adaptations on all of her novels. Watch Colin Firth Coming Out of the Lake.
Mr. Darcy?
Watch Matthew McFadden in the Rain. And then go read Pride and Prejudice. Do you get what I'm saying? Most people say do it the other way around, but no, not over here. We're edgy, we do things differently. Tip number 6 is fine to stop reading books if you're hating them. We're taught in school to always finish the books you're reading. But did anyone ever? I don't think I ever finished a single book when I was in school. Interesting. But yeah, no one ever, you don't need to. If you're hating a book, give it a chance. Try and get like 100 pages in. But if you're hating it, just stop. Life is too short to be wasted on books you hate. I'm a big mood reader. I'm not like other girls, but I am. I'm a big mood reader. Sometimes I know I should love a book, but if I'm not in the mood, I'm not going to enjoy it. So just put it aside and move on to something you actually want to read in that moment. If you're a physical reader, Is that what they're called? If you read physical books, here are some tips of what to look for. Good if you are dyslexic. I'm not dyslexic, but these really do help to make reading a lot easier and more enjoyable. So, I think we're on tip number 7. This is to read short books. Read books which are roughly 200 pages or less, because like when you first start reading again, sitting down for half an hour to read a book, something you're not used to doing. And when you sit down, you're like, yes, I'm reading, I'm in it, and you read like 20 pages and you're like, wow, I just read 20 pages. But if you're reading a 600-page book, 20 pages is nothing. Hold on. Look, if you read 20 pages of it, that's like that much. I'm sorry, Stephen, but it's demotivating. Short books will motivate you. If you happen to read 20 pages in a session, that's like 10% of the book, I think. Yeah, let's go with that. Also in this category, pick up plays. The reading time takes as long as it would take the play to be performed. I mean, I don't know if that needed to be stated, but they won't take you more than like 3 hours to read. Also, comic books, amazing. There are some incredible comic books out there which you can finish, you know, in an hour or 2. Or you can go the poetry route, but seriously, who wants to read poetry? Like, short books for the win. Okay, so tip number 8, picking the typeface and the chapter length. Picking books with clear, large typeface with like wide margins, always a good idea. Something like a hardback pretty much always has good fonts. Show you some examples. Oh, okay, I've got some examples. So, something like, find a place where I haven't scribbled all over it. Okay, so the Woman in Black, this kind of font. It's got thick margin, pretty large font, and it's quite well spaced. Like compared to something like Brilliant Book, but that font, which is quite small, there's a lot of like lines on the page. So it just takes longer for you to read each page, which can again be a little bit demotivating. I was saying about like hardbacks often have slightly larger font, and also the pages are thicker, so when you're reading you kind of feel like you're getting through the book slightly quicker. It's all about like tricking your brain basically into thinking you're reading faster than you are. And then these are just 3 editions. I'd always recommend going Oxford World Classics or vintage red spines. I find that Oxford ones have a reasonably clear font for classics compared to like the black penguin classics, which are just quite like blobby, just a little bit harder to read on the page, whereas something like vintage red spines are much clearer. So that was my very nerdy look at typeface. Who says this channel wasn't cool, okay? I'm sorry if that was insanely boring, but I know some of you out there would appreciate that. But the other thing is chapter length. So something like, I read this so quickly, I think because the chapters are so short. Like the chapters are literally like a page long. But there's like a chapter everywhere. Chapters everywhere. You can't, I'm dodging the chapters. This just helps because if you are getting to an end of a chapter and you're like, oh, I could read for another 5 minutes or so, you're probably less likely to start a chapter where it's like 50 pages long. Whereas I found with Thursday Murder Club, it's more motivating to get through because it's just like, I'll just read a couple more pages, and that actually does really add up and means you get through the books a lot quicker. So that's helpful. Tip number 9, audiobooks. A lot of people say to use audiobooks so you can read whilst you're commuting or cleaning or playing with your dog, which are all good uses of audiobooks. But I think less people talk about using audiobook whilst you're reading the physical book. Now this is particularly great if you're in school or uni or whatever and you have to read certain books. Like I had to read this in like a week. It's like a 400 page 18th century novel. Don't want to read it. It was actually quite good in the end. So plugged in the audiobook as you're reading, because there's a voice literally telling you what's being said. It just means you're less distracted. It makes you far more focused on what you're reading, and it just motivates you so much more because I think as you can see how much time the book will take, you can also speed it up. So I often listen on like 1.8 speed. Live life on the edge. Also with audiobooks, there are certain books which are even better as audiobooks. Like I've said before, Daisy Jones and the Six, one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. It has like a full cast and it has music in it. Something like Heartburn by Nora Ephron. It's narrated by bloody Meryl Streep. It's amazing. One of the best books I've ever read because of her narration. And then the same goes for like memoirs. I listened to Lily Allen's memoir. Like having someone actually narrate their life events, I think is far more personal and makes it for an even better reading experience than if you were just to pick up the book. Also just a note on audiobooks. Audiobooks are reading. Anyone who says not, send them my way. So my last 3 tips, if you're one of the people who says they don't have enough time in their day, these tips will help you. Tip number 10, create a habit. Set a time in your day where you read, whether it's when you wake up and you read for 15 minutes before you get out of bed. Find a time in your day where you're slightly less busy and pull out your book. I find I like reading around like tea time. I don't say English. Tea time is a thing, is a very strict thing in my household. Yeah, sit down with a cup of tea, read my book for an hour. There are times in your day, and don't lie to me, when you're sitting on your phone for 20 minutes or you're watching, 4 episodes of Friends before bed. Maybe just watch 3 and then read your book for the other 20 minutes. Okay, tip number 11. What is that? Tip number 11. Set yourself a target or goal. Reading's not about numbers at all. I think when you're starting, having a rough goal of when you want to finish a book by is helpful. Maybe say you want to read 1 book a month, or you just want to read 10 minutes a day. These sort of goals and targets help create habits, which means, reading just becomes effortlessly part of your life and you don't need goals anymore. So if you're someone who needs structure, consider setting some kind of goal in mind. And then tip number 12, always have a book on you. There are so many times in the day where it's just sort of dead time, you can't really be doing anything, but you might be waiting for someone, or on your commute, or your friend's late and you're just in the pub on your phone. If you had a book on you, that time is filled and also just looks super cool and intellectual. Yeah, just always have a book on you, and then you'll be surprised how much you actually end up reading when you just whip out your book. You're much more likely to read with the least amount of resistance possible. Just make it so easy to read that you kind of have to. Maybe. I think could be helpful. Those are my tips. Reading is not about numbers. It's not about how much you read. It's obviously about what you get out of reading. This is not a book to say how to read more books and up-level your books and smash your book content. Just because you read 200 books last year doesn't make you any more or less a reader than someone who read 10. There are different ways to read. There's different things you can take from reading, so don't get caught up in the numbers. And if you read 1 book last year, if it changed your life, that's pretty cool. You shouldn't be judged for literally what you're reading. It makes no sense. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave you, let you go, let you get onto your reading. I will see you very soon in a new video. Bye guys.